So I wanted to open this morning with a quote from Dr. Becky Bailey of Conscious Discipline, and we're going to talk a little bit about executive skills and what that means. But a big emphasis of conscious discipline is that adults must lend their executive skills to scaffold children's development. Once we see misbehavior as a call for help, we can begin the integrative process of coaching children for academic and social emotional help. And a lot of how we're going to perceive executive function and work through that is that executive function consists of skills deficits. And we're going to break that down even further because someone can have really exceptional planning skills, but when it comes to time management, it may be really difficult to actually implement that plan. And when we look at behavior, we've got to look at that through a lens of skills deficits because all behavior is a form of communication and all behavior is a form of some sort of skills deficits. And like Mr. Gallini spoke about in an IEP or any sort of plan, we've got to make sure that we're identifying what is the skills deficit and then how are we going to address it. If we misidentify the deficit, we're not going to be able to have an effective plan to address it. So in her work, Dr. Bailey breaks down the brain into three main areas, and Mr. Gallini spoke about this in terms of our prefrontal cortex in the front of our brain. And if you take your hand and you fold your thumb and you fold your four fingers over, it makes a nice image of a brain to be able to look at. The knuckles or the front of our brain is the executive state. That's where we use our executive function skills. It's where we question problem solving. What can I learn from this? Stopping and thinking, being able to think through the consequences of our behavior. The blue area of the slide or our thumb is our emotional state, where we have our feelings, our hippocampus, our amygdala. It requires connection, emotion. It's where our feelings get hurt. We tend to go to that part of the brain. And in IEP meetings, we need to be in our executive states, right, to be able to focus on the child and to take our feelings out of it. And what can often happen in an IEP meeting is that we go to our emotional state because everyone loves and cares about, we love and care about our children, and we want what's best for them. The red part of the brain is our survival state, fight, flight, shutdown. And I know when I have the opportunity to collaborate with Ashlie Walker, we often talk about that fight, flight, or shutdown. When we see children, and when I use the term children, I mean adolescents, children who are entering college, children go to a place of fight, flight, or shutdown frequently. It's where we can see lying, where we can see property destruction, defiance, self-injury, aggression, total meltdowns, and we're seeing survival state. And so when we talk about executive function, just like at an IEP meeting, we all need to be in our executive state. When we're teaching executive function, we have to be as well. Because if I'm in an emotional state or a state of fight, flight, or shutdown, I'm not in any state to try to help my child. So real life example, I have a wonderful 4.5-year-old who had a big meltdown last night. He was in his survival state. That's not the time for me to start teaching skill. I've got to wait until he comes back to his executive state to be able to work through what happened and what can we do about it. And so in the quote that I read previously from Dr. Bailey, where she talks about how we have to lend our executive state has to be strong enough and our executive skills have to be strong enough that we can lend those to our children and lend those to other people for teaching. Because if our executive state isn't strong, we can't help others.